Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. I got in touch with a couple of my buddies back from college, and I thought it was interesting how we basically started in the same place doing homework together at BYU, and how our careers kind of diverged into three pretty different pathways. And so instead of going through kind of our standard, tell us about your specific career, this was kind of a more discussion of where did we end up after these years since we've graduated. I hope you enjoy it. If you like this new format with a few more people talking together, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, follow along for more, and share this channel with your career curious friends. Who are you and what do you do? David first.
All right, hey, I'm David Miller. I am a reliability systems engineer. Basically, what I do is I look at aircraft and maintenance on aircraft and figure out how they're breaking and why they're breaking and how to make them better. The ultimate idea is how often do you see a 1980s car driving down the street? The answer is probably never. But most our military aircraft were built in the 1980s and they still fly every day. So we have to figure out how to make them fly. So that's it in a very quick nutshell.
And Nathan, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm Nathan Usevitch. I'm a professor at Brigham Young University. So I'm in mechanical engineering. So I teach engineering classes and then I do robotics research. So I design new types of robotic systems and publish our results to the world.
And I'm Dustin, and this is my YouTube channel. And unfortunately, this is not my full time job. In the daytime, I am a data scientist at Humana. And this is a fun conversation because we basically started at the same place doing homework together at BYU. And now our career paths kind of diverged over time. So, David, can you walk us through just the 30-second elevator version of what happened in your career after we all graduated back in 2015?
Yeah. So um, after we graduated, you guys all went off to graduate school. And I actually hadn't been accepted to any graduate schools, hadn't found a job, and was kind of in limbo land, and just trying to figure out what to do when Dr. Crockett gave me a call and said, "Hey, I'm looking for a graduate student, and I saw that you had applied a while back. Would you be interested in doing hydrophobic surfaces and fluid dynamics?" I'm like, "Yes, yeah, I want to go to grad school. It's my ultimate goal, so yes." So that's where I kind of ended up back at BYU real quickly, and like within months, and so I graduated from there. I should back up a little more. During undergraduate, I had done a bachelor's degree, a internship at Sandia National Labs, working with the B-52. And that was important because that once I graduated graduate school, I got a job working aircraft, and they invited me for an interview because I had B-52 on my resume. And so that was a company that started that was doing reliability engineering um, up up at Hill Air Force Base, and so they were interested. They saw I had aircraft experience in some way, and brought me on. And from there, my knowledge exposure has expanded across the board in reliability engineering. Um,
So
I
you're not doing hydrophobic surfaces anymore.
No, I haven't done a thing since I haven't
So
done anything from graduate school. once
I
you
guess I must
graduated?
have misremembered. I thought that you got that call from Professor Crockett before we
It
all
was.
went our separate
It
ways.
may have been before. It may have been before.
Okay.
It was
I
pretty
I'm pretty sure we went
okay.
to Buffalo Wild Wings to celebrate
Okay.
when I was still there.
All right.
So, okay.
I
Anyway,
Classic student
I
celebration, Buffalo Wild Wings
yes,
together.
that's
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 great.
exactly what we had to do.
I don't
Yeah.
think I've been to BWs since then.
No, I'm pretty sure that was the last time I've been there too.
All right, so it was before it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes
But
sense. So
yeah,
you've kind of been doing reliability engineering ever since graduate school, even though it's been with a couple of different companies
yeah.
here and there,
So
right?
I've been with two different companies, um, and for a while, basically contracted to be a butt in a seat, with the government. Is
I
the
know what
best
that's
way to,
like.
yeah, best way to compare.
Well, we can come back to that in a minute. Okay, Nathan, what about you? Give us the quick overview of your career so far.
Yeah, so graduated with you guys from BYU. I went to Los Alamos for the summer, Los Alamos National Lab, where I worked, did a summer internship there. And then after that, I went to do a PhD at Stanford. So I was in California at Stanford for 5 years, working on a PhD the whole time. I guess one summer during my PhD, I did an internship in Seattle with a Facebook research group. And that became important later because then when I graduated, that's what became my first job. So I went back to now called Meta in Redmond, Washington, and worked on a R&D group there developing wearable haptic devices. So my PhD was essentially on designing soft robots, so robots made of soft materials. And then at Meta, I was working on wearable haptic devices that use those same actuators to make haptic gloves, essentially. It was really good, and then the economy went a little south, and I got laid off from Meta after a couple years. And I got laid off, and the next week was the BYU faculty application deadline. So I applied at BYU and a bunch of other places too, and ended up taking a job to come be a professor at BYU. And so I've been
Was
here almost 2 years now at BYU.
I was going to ask, was that
Awesome.
during COVID or was that because of COVID that you got laid off or?
No, I started during COVID actually. So I
Oh,
started at Meta in 2020. And then it was in 2023, November of 2023, that there were the layoffs. And that was kind of like they had overhired during COVID. And so they were, a bunch of tech companies were doing kind of big downsizing at that point. So it's not a fun experience, but it ended up good and happy to be at BYU now.
Yeah. So I, after graduation, I went to Georgia Tech for aerospace engineering, which was a great experience. I had a couple internships with Lockheed Martin, and my research there was in um, operations, military operations analysis, or systems engineering, which is a really cool kind of niche in aerospace engineering, which doesn't really have much to do with designing aircraft, but rather how do aircraft systems work together with other systems. So that was I after my internships, I took a full time position with the same group in California, and we hated living in Palmdale, California, which is like the desert outside of Los Angeles. It's all of the bad parts about California without
is
any
that
of the
near
good parts.
Edwards Air Force Base?
Yes, it's right near Edwards. Um,
Explains a lot.
anyway, so I liked my job, so we moved to the group in Texas, kind of my same team, same kind of job at Lockheed in Texas. And then COVID hit, and my security clearance had finished when I was in just doing my internships, but I never got special access approval to the programs that they submitted me for. And so I was not doing a whole lot of useful work the whole time I was at Texas. And during COVID, there was a whole bunch of hiring. People couldn't hire people fast enough. And so I was getting offers for more money to go other places. Then we moved to Utah and I took a job at Northrop Grumman, working on GBSD, now known as Sentinel. And then that, again, didn't get the special access that I needed. And on the same day, I got the email saying, "You're approved. You now can come get your special access, was the same day that I decided to leave and take this job at Humana doing data science. On the one hand, it's like it's really good job security, right? If you get the clearance, then there's always going to be a job for you, unless Elon takes them all away, apparently. Um, but on the other hand, there's a whole lot of waiting, and like you mentioned earlier, sometimes it really is because the contract said you must have this many engineers, whether or not there's work for this many engineers, and so um, on the one hand, I spent a year at Northrop, not cleared, and it was during COVID, so they just gave me a laptop and had me work from home. And we had a really good looking garden that year because I didn't have any work to do. So I would listen to an audiobook about whatever thing had to do with my job. And that was it. Nobody was keeping track of me. And then, anyway,
During COVID, I
no,
walked my dog a lot, so
yeah, it was like during if that had happened at the tail end of my career, that would be perfect, right? Just kind of coast for a few years. But because it was at the beginning of my career, it felt like I was just creating this gap or this wedge in my resume, which is one reason why I was trying to recruit around with other jobs and eventually got this job with Humana because I just didn't want to have a year of gardening experience, right? Anyway.
So Dustin, do you think your career would have ended up in a totally different spot had you got this special access sooner? Like, do you think you'd still be at a defense company, or do you think that wasn't a big factor in where you ended up?
That's a good question. And it's hard to say for sure. If I had gotten the clearance within the 6 weeks it's supposed to take, I imagine that I would have had more experience with Northrop actually knowing like the job they hired me to do, right? And so, depending on how that could have gone, maybe I would have stayed on for longer. When I was searching around for jobs, I talked to a few of the other systems engineers who had been cleared for the program. And based on those conversations, I think I probably would not have liked the job, even if I had been cleared. Uh, but it's impossible to say, right? Because
We'll never
I
know. Yes, we'll
will
never
never
know.
know.
Well, so Nathan, you asked that question. It's interesting because I've held a security clearance before in the past, and one of the things is that your clearance will go inactive, but it's good for 2 years, and so it's a markability resume thing you can put on your resume that actually is attractive to a lot of the companies around here in the Ogden area where Dustin and I are. Um,
Hmm.
because there's a lot of companies that are supporting Northrop Grumman's massive. They're building an entire new rocket, and it's a massive program that probably encompasses like 50% or more of engineering in Ogden, and so there's if you had that clearance, it probably would open up other opportunities.
Yeah.
I mean, I've looked at jobs and they all say must have clearance or must be able to obtain clearance or especially SAP clearance, special access program clearance, because, and so that's kind of, I could almost call it like a certification or a thing, something like that, that you could put on a resume to make yourself marketable to open doors for other new jobs.
By that time, I was so sick of it. I was kind of glad to just leave my clearance behind.
Leave it all behind.
You could pay me enough to go back, but I don't think anyone would be willing to pay me as much as it would take, right? But Nathan, you've never had to deal with that, right? You've always been, yeah,
No, I've always been working on academic projects, and then at Meta, it was kind of industrial secret information, but no
right.
clearance, no government work, nothing like that.
Just proprietary.
So
Yeah.
this is something I've been curious about because when you're kind of working for a government contractor, you mostly just do whatever people tell you to do, which is very different from like an entrepreneur or a professor where your research
Sorry,
stuff,
guys.
you kind of have to go out and chase the money to do the research, right? Tell us how that works, because it's very different from what I've ever done.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You can think of every professor as like kind of running their own small company where the professor is kind of like the CEO. Their job is to go out and get money, sometimes in the form of government grants or sometimes in form of like industrial partnerships where you're partnering with companies or individuals or something like that. And so you have research that you want to do, you propose it, you get funding for it, and then you hire students to help you work on these projects. And then that's part of their education, during their graduate degrees or even their undergraduate degrees. They're doing research work that then results in, creation of new knowledge. And so part of my job as a professor is trying to identify promising areas, um, do research to show that we're capable of doing these things, and then write proposals that will fund future research in these areas. So there's no one telling me what to do. Um, I mean, there's people telling me if they'll give me money to say what I propose to do, but no one's telling me what to do day to day for my research.
So, question about job security. In the contracting world, you're always looking forward to the next contract. If you don't get the
Mhm.
next contract or your company doesn't get the next contract, then there's risk of layoffs and furloughs and stuff like that because your company doesn't have the job or the money to continue paying you.
Mhm.
Professors, there's that risk as well, where if you're not able to identify research areas or grants or anything like that, then BYU is going to say, see ya.
Yeah, I guess there's two different ways. So like one is like if I don't have grants, then I might not be able to hire as many students, right?
Hmm.
And it's a little different in the academic world because the longest you'd ever have an employee is like, the 5 years they're working on a PhD. So you kind of have this natural turnover of employees, and master's students are there for 2 years, So sometimes if you don't have more research money, you just can't hire more people for the future. So you typically try to have money for the people that you're already employing. And then there are various mechanisms. Universities have mechanisms like when you start off as a professor, they kind of give you a startup package that includes some funding to kind of get your research going. And there's some other mechanisms, if you're in a rough spot to try and cover the gaps. So there are some mechanisms, but at the end of the day, if you're not be able to hire as many students to work with if you don't have as much external money.
Hmm.
So I have another question about this. When
Hmm.
I when I was well, actually, I guess at BYU there was one professor, Professor Truscott. I think we were all in fluids together, right? Or no, 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 no. It was instrumentation that we took from him.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and I think a couple semesters after we took that class, he moved his lab up to Utah State. And I don't know the backstory. I don't know why he moved up there.
And I know
But
he's actually
then
moved again. He's now at King Abdullah University in Saudi
Where?
Arabia. Kaust.
nice.
King Abdullah
Because there's
University of
lots of
Science and
water in Saudi
Technology.
Arabia.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I
so
Hey, oil is a fluid too, David. um, Sand can also be a fluid. I don't know if you guys remember when we were taking fluid dynamics and he was just like, well, give us an example of a fluid. And I was always the one that said sand coming out of a dump truck. And anyway, I thought it was really clever. Um, but so he's moved around a couple of times. When I was working on my MBA at Georgia Tech, one of the professors there at the end of semester, he's like kind of sad. He's just like, well, my application for tenure didn't go through. They didn't accept it, so I'm moving to a different school and things like that. Is How does that work? How does getting tenure work?
yeah, so most universities have this tenure process, whereas essentially after 5 years of work, you go up for review, and essentially the department kind of reviews your work as a professor. So that includes your research work, like your grants that you've brought in, the publications that you've produced, the teaching work that you've done, like how you've done teaching, and then they'll also get references from other researchers in the community. So they'll request like kind of letters of reference, not from collaborators, but from kind of colleagues who can kind of comment on your work in a broad sense. And then there's a tenure decision where they basically decide whether or not to give you tenure or not, and which essentially means that you have more job security after tenure. But that kind of first 5, 6 years is essentially this like kind of pre-tenure, where they're not necessarily committed long term. You're just kind of yeah, you're there testing it out.
But you're still a full employee. You're still getting paid. You still can do all your research and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, you're still a full employee, and almost all universities, or a lot of universities, by the time they've employed you for like 6 years and put a lot of money and effort into training you, they don't really have a large incentive to like get rid of you at that
Yeah,
point. So,
yeah,
so most universities want you to be successful, so they bring people in hoping that they'll be able to get tenure. Like that's the plan, but it is kind of like a mechanism to ensure that you have high quality faculty, and then the idea is that after tenure, you have a little more security, and then it frees you up to be more creative. Is the idea. So
yeah,
once you're past tenure, you're like now you can work on maybe more high risk, high reward research opportunities, or different teaching or service, or kind of different types of opportunities after you've gone through the tenure process. And some people do that, and some people kind of keep doing the same thing. And there's kind of different models, but that's kind of the idea of the system, at least as far as I understand it.
So, is it true that at BYU, the teaching part of the tenure decision is maybe bigger than at other schools?
I'd say maybe
That's
bigger than, yeah, than other research universities. So every
okay.
university kind of has their own focus on like what they value from their faculty, and so different schools have kind of different missions, if you will. And BYU is really focused on being a strong undergraduate teaching university.
Yeah,
Is kind of like the top priority. But part of that, at least in our minds at BYU, is that you are doing really good research, because then that's creating opportunities and knowledge, and like kind of a better environment for that undergraduate spot.
yeah.
So I'd say yes,
That
it is a
I
bigger focus on teaching than other universities, but there are some universities that are teaching focus as well. It's probably similar
yeah.
there, and there's kind of different blends at different spots.
I
That
always
makes
remember
sense.
BYU. Oh, sorry, Justin.
You go
I
ahead, David.
all right. I always remember BYU saying that their goal was to be the best undergraduate program.
Yeah, we
And
have this goal of we want to be a really good undergraduate program, and part of that is having a good research program, but it's just never going to eclipse the kind of the focus on undergraduate places. And other universities, maybe their focus is to be a leading research institution, and then there's maybe a little more focus on the research side and the graduate side as opposed to the undergraduate side.
That makes a lot of sense. I When I went to Georgia Tech, I could definitely tell. I had a few classes from a few professors who I knew were just there for the research, and they hated teaching, and they didn't care about their. Oh man, especially the only undergraduate class that I took as a math credit for my graduate degree was this French guy. Anyway, I won't go into the details there. It was not a good experience, not a great semester. Um, anyway, okay, so let's kind of move on and be as specific or vague as you want, and tell us your job title and how much money you make, or
oh,
even
okay.
more generally, your job title and what are the benefits along with your salary that come on. And again, if you want to tell us, okay, is this enough to support a family? If you want to tell us a dollar amount, great. If you don't, that's fine. Are you doing okay? Or are you fine? Or whatever.
Who's that?
David, you go first.
Okay. All right. So I am officially titled a project engineer. I prefer to consider myself like a mechanical systems engineer or a reliability engineer. It best describes what I do. Um, let's see. I graduated in 2017 with my master's, and I was earning north of 70. I broke 100,000 5 years later, and I'm a little bit more above that now.
Yeah.
Um, so it was a good. I mean, I I would say it was a good quick uptick. There was engineers are known to be able to earn good money. There was a good quick uptick, and then it does plateau, and it does plateau, and you gotta understand that you're going to kind of be once you find you once you hit a spot, you're going to kind of just be on a uptick by like the yearly annual reviews of like
Yeah.
10 or so.
So that matches with my experience when although maybe a little different. So when I graduated, I think I was making 80 something in Southern California, which is not great. And when I moved to Texas, they actually lowered my salary, which was stupid for all these other reasons that we won't get into. But then I think my uptick was mostly because of the job market during COVID when I was kind of juggling a couple different job offers.
Mhm.
And if I had stayed put, I don't know what would have happened there. But I guess to answer my own question, the benefits are great. The salary is fine. We have a nice house. Nice house. We also bought when the prices were skyrocketing, but the interest rates were plummeting. And so now we're stuck there forever because we're never going to get an interest rate that's that good again.
Well, you did ask about benefits. I mean, it's standard healthcare, vision, dental are kind of the three standard ones people ask about. And then there's other things like disability insurance, long term disability insurance, life insurance, all that other
Yeah.
stuff that they pay for. Um, I've always found that the health benefits are better than. Well, I only have two things to compare it to: my engineering and my wife's nursing. And I always found that my engineering healthcare benefits were comparable or better, and usually better than her nursing benefits. So,
Interesting. I've always thought my health benefits were kind of bad, but maybe they're just all bad. And I even work for an insurance company. Anyway, Nathan, give us the broad overview.
that was BYU pay.
Yeah, I probably won't give specific numbers. So at Meta, it's always been kind of complicated. So in tech, you have a base salary, and then you have like a bonus that's based on your own performance and the company's performance, and then you have like a stock grant that's vesting over time. So every
That's with
year you have
Meta.
some percentage of the stock that's vesting, and so your compensation is a function of both your own performance and then also the company's performance as well. So that can be, either really good or not so good. So I did that for the couple years and then came to BYU. Academic salaries are also a little bit weird, and that you're on like a contract for normally the school year, but not the summer. But then you could pay yourself from research money over the summer. So depending on how much research money you have, your summer salary is actually kind of set by that. So it's always changing, kind of in response to these kind of different factors. So that's made it kind of interesting. I will say I made a lot more money at Meta than I do at BYU. So that's been kind of an interesting thing to think through about, like, okay, how do I value, different aspects of a job and a career. So that's something I've been thinking about since I've been here.
That's a good point. With my career so far, when you're working as a government contractor, they're very specific about keeping track of your time. Even though it's a salaried position, you still have to report down to the tenth of an hour, right? Every 6 minutes, what was it that you were working on? And that just drove me nuts because you had to make sure it was exactly 40 at the end of the week, right? Or exactly 80 at the end of 2 weeks, whichever it was. One of the greatest benefits that I've had leaving that and taking my current job is that now it really is just a straight up salary. And I'm on a really great team where my boss doesn't actually care how long I'm logged in or when I'm logged in. Most of them are on the East Coast anyway. And so as long as I'm getting my work done, nobody's being like, but how long were you anyway, it's surprising how liberating that feels to not have to be tracking it so closely.
All right, you say that, Dustin, but like from my experience, like right now I have one charge code.
Yeah.
So I put 99999 4 on Fridays. Um, so on the same numbers every single week for one charge code. So you say that, and you have to like, and some companies are different. I understand that, and they are very specific with the projects.
Yeah.
But
Fair enough.
yeah, so like I just you know it's not something I would say tell people to steer away from because it just kind of depends on the company.
Yeah, and I haven't ever reported my hours since I was an intern at Los Alamos during my undergraduate. So, the whole time as a grad student and then as at Meta and then here, I've never, I mean, no one's ever asked me to do that. And there's not really anyone who would ask me to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense. It was interesting because David, you're exactly right. When I was at Northrop, it was just one charge code. When I was at Lockheed, the nature of the job was we were kind of in more of a consulting kind of position, and so we were working on maybe even 10 projects in a given week, right? But the thing, this is probably just my own OCD perfectionist tendencies that I need to get over, is I would just feel so guilty like, okay, I am not going to clock out to go to the bathroom, even though I'm not working on a project. And to avoid clocking out to eat my lunch, I'm going to warm it up and bring it back to my desk and keep working while I eat. Because a 9-hour day is already long. And so I
You don't want to make it 9.5.
don't want to make it 9.5. And Lockheed even changed to a 10-4 schedule for my last year or so. Um, and so a 10-hour workday, I don't want to make it 10.5, right? Anyway,
Anyways, I
that's
want to ask
just
you
kind of one
about
side
that.
benefit. Yeah.
So I work 980s, which means I work 9 hours every day, 8 hours on Friday, and then I get every other Friday off. Which, when I said four, the way my company does is you report 4 on every Friday, but the way we count it is 8 hours on Friday, then
Yeah.
you get every other Friday off. And I love it
Yeah.
because, like I was telling Dustin earlier today, today was my Friday off, and I spent the day doing yard work. All right, now yard work was so much fun. I was dethatching the yard, so it was a lot of work. um, but I love it. I love having the every other Friday off. I think 10 hours just scares me to death. I don't think I would ever
Yeah.
want to do 10 hours and then have every Friday off. What did you think between the 980 and the, what do they call it, 1080?
I think 1040 because it's
Yeah,
40
1040.
hours, 10, 4
Yeah,
or 410. 410, that's
Four
what it is. Yeah.
tens, four
And
tens
four
is how I've
tens.
heard it. Yeah.
Yeah. 410s. So, um, I did both. Like I said, Lockheed started as 980 and then switched to 410, and then Northrop was back on the 980. But because nobody was watching very closely, they didn't care. For a while there, I went back to a 410 at Northrop. Um, so there's a couple of things to consider when you're commuting, when you're driving into work. Uh, I didn't like spending the time in the car. So when you only have to drive in 4 times every week, and that saves you an hour of driving over the course of the whole week, then maybe that's worth it. The other thing was, um, either way is fine. The 10 hours does get really long, especially if you have to drive a half an hour there and back. Then you're basically gone from your house for 11 hours a day, which when I was a graduate student, I was doing that anyway, right? you, you just have to be in the lab for 11 hours. But anyway, either way is fine. the way I really prefer it is right now, where nobody cares my exact number of hours that I'm working. Right. For instance, this today I worked for a few hours this morning, and then it was time to start packing up the car since we drove up here to Idaho to visit my mom, and that was fine. Nobody cares that I track that I'm taking half of the day off to drive up, or if I have a doctor's appointment or whatever. When I was working for the Defense Department, you have to balance it out, right? There has to be 40 hours in there somewhere. And now it's nice because as long as it's getting done, nobody cares when or exactly how much.
Yeah.
So anyway,
So like today, for example, I texted my boss, and today was my Friday off, but I texted him and said, "Hey, I have an hour and a half left from earlier this week because I had some doctor appointments. I have
yeah,
my kids, my family too, and this is a different subject, but I was like, can I just do it from home so I don't have to drive in? And he's like, yeah, go
yeah,
for it. For an hour and a half, he's like, yeah, I don't care. Um,
yep,
but we do have to make sure we hit our 40 every week, and yeah, and it all comes down to it really comes down to contracts. And when the government comes and audits you, they want to make sure that they're spending their money appropriately and you're working. The famous phrase is report work the hours you report and report the hours you work, or something like
yeah.
that.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Nathan, does anybody care whether you're in the office or you're working from home, or how's that?
I mean, like the idea is just that you're kind of present on campus, I guess. And the only way this is really reflected is, I guess, when you go when you have an annual review that then kind of culminates in this tenure review. And so part of that is, you're being a good professor essentially. So I mean, I have office hours for students. I have classes I have to teach. So I kind of have like constraints in my schedule, but no one's really like checking up. So
Yeah.
sometimes I'll do a
Okay.
little bit of work from home, but I do, probably 95% of my work from the office, and in part because it's just easier. I have students I need to meet with, I have people I
Right.
need to collaborate with, and it's just everyone is on campus, and so that's where I normally am.
All right, this subject
This,
has come up. I want to ask this. What's your opinion of working from home? Dustin, you're doing it right now. Nathan, you
yeah.
hardly ever do it.
So it is an interesting conundrum. I hate commuting. It feels like wasted time to me driving into the office. So with all of that considered, I love working at home because my commute is the 90 seconds it takes to walk from my bed down the stairs to my office, right? However, especially when I have young kids like I do now, uh, when I'm working at home, it's so easy to get distracted by all of these other things around the house that I would rather be doing, or to myself personally, it's a higher priority that the lawn gets mowed or the bathroom remodel gets worked on or whatever. And so
Or
I
my
have to,
favorite, when the 3-year-old comes to me and says, "Play with me."
yeah, right. Like, sorry, I know to you it looks like I'm just staring at this screen all day, but yeah.
You've been
Anyway,
sitting there for 7 hours. All right.
right there are some there are some interesting challenges. Ultimately, I think I would get more work done. I would work a little more efficiently if I was in a dedicated office and my coworkers were nearby. Instead, they're spread out all over the country, which is kind of nice. But because I don't have to drive somewhere, I think it's well worth the sacrifice, even if I have to log on right before bedtime to check on a model that was running and taking a few hours and re-kick it off over the night or whatever. Anyway, I think net I prefer working from home and the flexibility that comes with that.
Another thing is most of my work has been had some sort of hardware component too, so we're
Yeah.
building robots, and so some of that you kind of have to be where the equipment is. So I meant I would, work from home sometimes and work from the office other times, but I don't think I could ever do my work fully from home because I'm reliant on equipment and like building stuff and things like that.
Your hands are
You
touching
don't
things
have
more than a keyboard.
a
Yeah.
huge garage full of all of your robotics tools.
We have some tools at home, I mean, 3D printers and things like that, so we can do some stuff at home, but yeah, nicer stuff at work.
See,
No,
I asked that question. I personally believe that we made such advancements in professional society during COVID with regards to working from home. And granted, there was multiple companies that like failed because people weren't ethical or weren't working when they were working from home. But I believe in it. Like if you have good ethical people working for you, I think there's no reason that you need to be driving into work.
Yeah.
There's no difference in me sitting in my room in a pair of sweats typing on the computer versus sitting in my little office that I call a closet
yeah.
typing on a computer at work, you
Hey,
know.
well, you're ahead of me. I never had an office when I was doing that kind of work.
Yeah. Yeah.
This has been really fun, guys. I'm enjoying this conversation. So, kind of to close things out here, um, Nathan, I know you have an Instagram and a YouTube channel that you've been working on, which
That's
I have
right.
to say are very fun to watch. So tell us about that. Where can people find you?
Yeah, nerd_dad_life on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And so I've been since I was a grad student. I've always been intrigued by like puzzles, like kind of physics puzzles. Like someone will ask a question in class and it makes you think. And so I've been making little videos about some of them, and I use these in my class as well. So we'll talk about this in class, as it relates to different topics. And sometimes we do projects with my kids and things like that. And so it's been a fun outlet that I wish I had a little more time for. But you should check it out. Like and subscribe.
Yes, that's what we're all working for, right? Maybe someday we'll be content creator millionaires. Who knows? Great. And David, do you have it? I mean, if people want to find you, do you want to be found?
Yeah, you can find me right here in West Haven. Otherwise, I'm not on social media, and I am
Great.
so glad to be not on.
There you go. That's it. That's our conversation. Thanks for following along. Don't forget to follow Nathan at Nerd Dad Life on TikTok and Instagram. And as always, subscribe for more, and don't forget to share the channel with your career